Hello, welcome to the Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Dave and Geo. How's everybody?
I am doing well this afternoon.
Yes, nice. This is episode 78. Our horror season's here.
Yes, everything on the VCN the past couple of weeks has been spooky season. We've been on the watch along watching the last 3 episodes of Ahsoka, where we get the Dathomir witches, and that has been fun to see. What's the little bit of kind of spooky season that we have in Star Wars. I think this week coming up, we're going to be watching Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales, though I'm not entirely sure how terrifying those tales are.
They're not.
Well, it being a Lego show, that was kind of a giveaway, yes. But
you're muted, Geo.
That's so embarrassing. Excuse me, everyone. The Lego Star Wars has really... Next, I'll be hot micing. Lego Star Wars has really evolved a lot further beyond what I initially thought it would be. I remember first time seeing Lego Star Wars products on the shelves, like in Toys R Us or something, and thinking, wow, these 2 gigantic things merging into one. These things are going to be so cool. You'll never see it again. I better get them while they're on the shelves. And then 25 years later, still pumping them out.
yes.
But now with Disney Plus specials and originals as well. But
those you're not entirely wrong, Geo, because those Star Wars Lego UCS sets are very rare. Then once they're gone, they're gone.
That's true. That is. I also didn't imagine it would become such hot property, and some sets would become so limited and so popular as they have become. But I think that's just the way all things have gone in the last 10, 15 years, with the explosion of pop culture and the constant access we have to it from our phones, from our laptops, from our PCs, from our devices. And I mean, you see that in adjacent fandom all the time. You can see them trading cards. I still cannot believe the value of those Pokemon trading card booster packs that I opened. Because that meta jumped out about 4 or 5 years ago, just before COVID, and then I thought that would be it. That would be the crest and the wave crashing back down. But it's come to my attention recently that those things are spiking in price as well as...
Well, a friend of mine just made the same mistake. He opened I think it was like a Masters of the Universe card set, and then the day later somebody offered him like 600 kroner or some dollars for it in Norway, and he was kicking himself for
that. Yeah, but it comes to that difficult question, right? Would you actually part with it? If it's been with you, if it's something you got as a 12-year-old, and you've loved keeping it, in a box or in a deck or in a file somewhere, or just had it in your drawer. If you had it in your drawer, what's wrong with you? What kind of collector are you? But would you really part with it now? It's almost like the amount of time you've spent with it, even if you've not actively been playing with those things, you become a lot more materially attached to it. So
I do not part with anything that I have had since childhood. It is all here. There's the G.I. Joe and Transformers section over there. There's a Masters of the Universe section over there. The Star Wars section is right here behind me. Batman and Batman the Animated Series is on that wall over there.
Oh yeah, I could never part with my own
shelves of Happy Meal toys back over there.
Oh,
But,
wow.
I fully understand, however, that my children someday are just going to sell all of this shit. It's all going away.
I have a friend who's got in his office just shelving with hundreds of Transformers. And he's like, this is why I can't remodel the kitchen anymore. Because all the money spent on Transformers in the 90s and stuff. But they look really cool. And whereas I got omnibuses and I got like steelbooks galore, physical media, books, comics.
See, physical media, in I think a lot of people found the downfall of the streaming. I know we're on a tangent here, but bear with me. We'll get back to it. Is for Skip, for example, when he was without power and without reliable internet and everything for weeks after the hurricane, what is there to watch? You know, his lifeline is he goes out and he has to find and buy and set up a Starlink just so he can sort of get communications, but that's not, or at least wasn't at the time, enough with everybody using it to stream all his movies and shows and things that he's done. He has not a collection like you have, but he's got physical media, but discovered he didn't have a DVD player or anything anymore.
Oh,
Yes.
oh,
Yes. Has the little
Did
bit
he
of
have, like,
media, but no way to show it.
No PS5 or Xbox One X or Series X to play it on.
or even
Skip's not a
Xbox
gamer
360.
because he's got that motion. You know, it makes
Oh.
motion
Oh, I
sense.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Certain games will do that to me, but not a lot of them.
So yeah, just no way for that stuff to be shown. Is there's your downfall of your streaming. Is the cloud is great, but you're not guaranteed access to it.
Yeah,
You don't own it. If you don't
Yeah.
see it and can't feel it, you don't own it.
that's true. Technically, nobody owns physical media anyway because technically it's still a lease from the studio. It's just that they're not going to come to your house and actually take it. So it's like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
but yeah, it's. Oh man.
All right, but let's get to it and let's talk about the spooky season stuff. I know, Kat, you've been collecting there. You have just mounds upon mounds of horror movie. Are they all horror movies? Are they horror movies, spooky movie, Halloween?
I only picked the horror movies.
Yes. So
And I
it's
came up with 85 titles, 8 of which I can't get to because they're in my Criterion section, which is under here.
Yeah.
But the Criterion ones I will tell you about. M by Fritz Lang, one of my all-time favorite films. Diabolique, excellent French movie about these two guys who are trying to trick this girl into thinking they killed. It's a really great movie. Repulsion by Polanski, about the girl who's going crazy inside her apartment. Onibaba, which is a brilliant Japanese horror film set during medieval time Civil War. It's about these two, mother and daughter, who've been left alone while the husband's off fighting in the war, and they prey on wayward samurai that come through their fields. And it's a really good chiller of a film. But yeah, those are some of the horror selections I have for Criterion. Coming in the mail, I have Night of the Living Dead 4K, which I got their latest sale. That's a good one. And now I have other classics here. Lately on my channel, we've been showing off, or not showing off, but been reviewing a lot of the Universal classic, horror movie monsters, such as.
I caught the tail end of this week's, which was The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yes.
Yeah, that's. I enjoy the classic monsters there.
Yeah, we got Dracula from 1931. That's of course a classic in its own right. We got The Mummy from 1932. You got the Wolfman from 1941. Got, see, The Invisible Man from 1933. And, of course, Creature from the Black Lagoon from 1954. Not the last Universal monster, but it's considered the last of the iconic Universal monsters. And I love how they're mimicking the Jaws poster here. That's just really great. Of course, the arguably the best of them all right here, Frankenstein.
Yes.
Which will be covered next week. And then a surprisingly great sequel, when sequels weren't even a thing, Bride of Frankenstein. Island of Lost Souls is another one I have criteria on that I just remembered. That's a very good horror film. And then, of course, you have the more modern remake of The Wolfman with Del Toro, Hopkins, and those other characters. But those are some of the still
kind of the mid remakes genre, like the Christopher Lee Dracula movies and the 50s. There,
I have some of those digitally. I do not have physicals of those. Those are so many, and those aren't things you're going to find in a store. Actually, you're not going to find any of this in stores anymore because they've been getting rid of it. Other horror films. If you guys want to take turns, you talk about other things in between.
Oh well, see. I love, and my love for the classic monsters comes from a totally different place. It's more of like a Halloween movie kind of thing, but it's less horror. And I love all of those creatures as they appeared in Monster Squad. Did you guys ever watch Monster Squad?
1987.
Gio, have you seen that one?
I haven't, no.
Oh my goodness. See,
tell me why I should watch it.
There's your recommendation. So Monster Squad is the, mid-ish, it's kind of technically late, but it's more the mid-80s kids movie fad. So think about Goonies combined with like Ghostbusters, except instead of fighting ghosts, they're fighting the classic Universal monsters.
Okay.
So this whole group of kids, it's a beloved band of kids with all the different like personalities that they build up the backstories and stuff, like the Goonies. It's like, oh, there's the loud one, oh, there's the technical one, oh, there's this one. But and they're battling the Universal monsters. And it's got some seriously hilarious like classic lines and repeatable things. So if I have a recommendation for a Halloween movie that's kind of down the rabbit hole a little bit that you haven't seen, Monster Squad would be it.
Mm-hmm. I'm taking note. It does sound fun. Do they have do they use more like prosthetics and makeup for the monsters there, or these models? I'm assuming
this was all costuming.
Costume,
Like the CG in it, whatever there is, and I don't know that it was even CG at that point. It was probably like just special effects before there was CG. Ain't the greatest, but the costuming and stuff pretty good for the time period and what you were seeing. So, I think that kind of that classic late 50s, 60s monster makeup kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I like that vibe.
Yeah. Got a horror double feature here. Shining.
Yeah.
You see all the mazes comprised of the phrase "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." All around.
I couldn't make that out, but I'm glad you pointed that out to us. Yeah, that's great.
That intense right there.
Yes, and a good, and then it's a sequel, Doctor Sleep.
Yes, Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
Yes, Rose the Hat, amazing.
Ashley's.
Yeah, we spoke about that in our last Spooktacular, The Shining and Doctor Sleep.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about like adjacent projects to Star Wars that has some of the biggest actors in.
Yes.
And yeah, Dave, you brought up Doctor Sleep as one.
Well, and like
for the younger generations.
According to Ashley, Ashley's taken and had a Dr. Sleep poster signed in person by Ewan, and he's just so thrilled that people have seen that, that they've seen those other things that he's in other than the Star Wars projects and just enjoy it. I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, it was actually I was just asking around whoever I was talking to recently about like Halloween preferences or any like rituals or things they like to rewatch or favorite horror films, and Mike Flanagan, who directed Doctor Sleep, his name came up because I guess now we're in the era of people binge watching TV more than watching films.
Yeah.
And he's behind a lot of the I don't think it's the American Horror Story shows. That I think that's still Ryan Murphy led, but like The Haunting of Bly Manor and things like that, which in the UK EU they're licensed under Netflix. I don't know if they're Netflix original shows or they're just that's where they're streamed for us on there. But yeah, so he's been somebody I've been thinking of as well.
He just made another
The Haunting of Hill House, Midnight Mass,
Midnight Mass.
Usher.
He just made another very successful Stephen King, which is set to come out with Tom Hiddleston in it, I believe. I don't remember the name. I haven't read it because it was one of his newer books.
Life of Chuck?
Yes, I think that's it. Yeah, Life of Chuck. Okay. That's been getting very great reviews. And people are like, "Oh, he's the best Stephen King director." I'm like, have people forgotten Andy Muschietti already?
It's like, yes. Well, in all honesty, people have, because it was, 40 years ago that all the 80s Stephen King stuff, came out. Is that some of the scared the holy bejesus out of me in my childhood? It's like, question the wisdom of my parents and letting me get a hold of and watch like Christine and Pet Cemetery and
not to mention Frank Darabont was a really good director of a couple.
That was gonna be my comeback. I was gonna say, wait, the actual best Stephen King director is Frank Darabont.
Yes, I have both of his here in 4K Steelbook, but they're not horror, so I didn't show them. Another horror film I have here, Cloverfield. This is the only.
I have never seen that. Well, I take that back. I've never seen that in its entirety. I've only seen.
This is the only found footage movie I actually like. Because being it set in a city and everything, the soundtrack was excellent. Because things like Blair Witch, it's like, yeah, I get it. It's realistic. It's trying to be quiet, but it's like when you're watching something that's mostly dead silent, just people walking around and it just gets really boring. This is just assault on the senses. It's also only like 70 minutes long. So it's like a lean, mean movie. Gets you right in there. I mean, yeah, the first 15 minutes at the party is kind of slow, but once it hits the fan, it just takes off. And it's like a fun roller coaster with some pretty good jump scares and other horror type scenes in it. But that I thought was a very good film.
That's one I own as well. That's top of my modern horror type film favorites. It's one that you can enjoy again and again as well. It's not too profoundly depressing or demonic. It's a thrill ride, and I'm really glad I actually managed to see it on the big screen with friends when it came out, because it was a great experience.
And this next one, based on a graphic novel, 30 Days of Night, set in Barrow, Alaska. This is actually a pretty good movie. More like vampire action, but it's got some good, scares in it. But with Josh Hartnett and Melissa George and Danny Houston as the lead vampire. So that was pretty cool. This next one is not as well known, but everybody should see it. It's a vampire film by Anna Lily Amirpour called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. It's set in Iran, filmed in Bakersfield, which is interesting that Bakersfield does actually look a lot like Iran.
Look at Iran.
But it's funny because
up armored Toyotas on the street.
I'm not going to say anything disparaging about Bakersfield, but the fact that it stands in and works very well for Iran. No, it's not. It's just a nice, quiet little town. It's not like military or anything like that. It's just saying, like a lot of places in Iran, like normal places. Don't believe everything you see in the media. But it's a great horror film. That girl walks home alone at night. There's vampires about. It's got some really kick-ass music in it too. But that was more of an independent release.
I was going to ask, Yeah, it looks like one of those like cult independent classics that people should watch.
Yeah, I think, let's see, what year is that? I think it's like, it's a short hour, 40 minutes. It's 2015. Yeah, 2014, 2015, around there. This next one, based on a short story by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, The Black Phone, with Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Now, the atmosphere is excellent. Ethan Hawke is amazing. I do think it feels too much of a happy ending with too much of a tie it off in a nice little bow. Some of the ideas don't work very well, but it is very eerie in that whole 70s atmosphere they cultivated. Filmed in North Carolina, subbing for Denver, 1978.
Part of North Carolina, like Western
Morgantown or
Morgan.
Yeah. But this is great, and they got Tom Savini to make these masks, like a lower half, and then there's sometimes an upper half. I recently got a little plushie of this character.
Etsy. What's going on Etsy?
I saw that. I'm like, oh, that looks so cute. I'm gonna get
it. Interesting. It's cool though, because that was one that you brought up. You showed us that disc in our first Halloween episode, and it's been on my mind to try and catch that. I did see it's available on Netflix, but has the ominous "leaving soon" banner. So I'm gonna try and...
For the longest time when I had a Netflix account, that's the only stuff I would watch. I would just put stuff on the watch, always go to the Leaving Soon tab and just watch that, because I figured, if it's a Netflix original, it'll be there forever. I don't have to worry about it. But I don't have Netflix anymore. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, even if it is there forever, it becomes just buried, and what else
Right. Well, I'd have my watch list was gargantuan on Netflix. There was no way I was ever going to finish it unless I got hobbled again. This next one destroyed the director's career.
Oh.
It is a cult film. It competed against Blade Runner, which also failed. It competed against E.T., which wildly succeeded. June 1982 is one of the greatest months in cinema history. It has not been repeated. That is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Hey, that's what I watched 2 nights ago.
Yes.
I watched it alone.
This ruined his deal with the studio to do other horror films, and that's when things unfortunately went downhill. These critics and people didn't understand how excellent this movie was. One of the best horror films ever made. It is about paranoia. The practical effects still hold up today. The work that Rob Bottin did was amazing.
It's so grotesque.
Oh yeah, the dog thing. Oh god, that's just amazing.
I got up and I got up to get a drink. I came back and I was looking at that thing on 2 legs, and then I wasn't sure it was 2 legs, and then I wanted to walk away.
And you know what's really great about this movie? They don't answer all the questions of who did what. Like, who broke into the blood bank and drained all the blood? Who went into McCready's hut and turned on the lights and that kind of stuff? Like, who did what? And John Carpenter says to this day, there is a clue that you can pick up on that will tell you which one of them may or may not be the thing in the final scene. But he won't say what it is. Only that there is a definitive answer, and you can pick up on it from watching it. So that just makes it all the more fun, because it's like engaging the audience that way. It's encouraging you to think, because it's not spoon-feeding all the answers to you.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of why Alien works really well as a kind of independent horror film. As an isolated horror film, not an independent.
Film. Alien is an arguable jumping cross genre thing. Is Alien an action film? Is it a sci-fi film? Is it a horror film?
The original is more of a horror film, but sequel is like action.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even the original though is gonna, makes Sigourney Weaver the action hero.
Yeah.
Well, now of course she is ridiculously kind of put in the horror genre there, which is, we need to have a nearly naked scene because it's a horror movie. So yes, we're going to have to fight off the alien and beat them in our underwear.
She supposedly advocated for her not to be wearing it in that scene. Says, why not go for it? And the director said, no. This next one I have here, Another film by John Carpenter, which came after The Thing. It's actually pretty prescient. It's a good social commentary. It's kind of more like a comedy, but it has horror elements, and it has that famous line that I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. And that is They Live.
Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper. Oh, this is great. About a great social commentary about the ills of capitalism and commercialism, how it brainwashes you into buying a bunch of shit you don't need and practically being zombies. But then it turns out people are like actually zombified aliens. Put on my glasses.
Wait, what? That's a horror film? I thought that was a documentary. Pretty close.
That also with Keith David, who was also in The Things. He brought him back. And Roddy Piper, again, good actor too for that. He was pretty good.
Oh yeah, for what he was and doing in that was hilarity.
Oh yes, and God, look at this. This is such a nice design to the cover.
Yeah, that's a great steelbook. Glossy
cover, and you got all the alien stuff on the back, and with a surprise ending. It's like wow, very good. This next one just celebrated its 50th anniversary. We had special guest Robert Meyer Burnett on the channel, and we talked about it. With a great tagline, "Who will survive and what will be left of them?" The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I mean,
America's most bizarre and brutal crimes. It's funny. Toby Hooper says people would come up to him and insist that the story was real. He couldn't figure out why. It's like, well, maybe because of the opening text where you imply that the story is real. But it feels like a documentary, almost like a horror film or like a home movie, which gives it its power. And it's just so bizarre. The soundtrack is amazing. When the whole thing with the sunspots and the engine turning.
As low budget as it was, and the kind of quality of the filmmaking kind of makes it seem more news footagey.
Mm-hmm. Here's something you probably didn't know. The opening shot of the skeleton in the cemetery that's all rotting or whatever, they bought a real human skeleton from India because it was cheaper to buy a real dead guy and have it shipped over there than it would be to buy a fake plastic skeleton, because there were no regulations or rules about those things in those days. Because the people would have their corpses donated to like universities or whatever. And when they were finished with them, he's like, "Can I buy it?" It's like, "Sure." And that was like, oh gosh. I mean, they didn't say what they did with it after they finished with it. I hope they buried it in a cemetery or something. But
one would hope.
And he went to a veterinarian, and there were a bunch of dead house pets there, because I guess this was before the trend of people wanting to have their remains of their house pets. And he's like, "Yeah, you can have them." So he took the house pets and ripped them all up to make all the guts and horror and all the animal shit inside the house.
And that's how you keep your budget low, friends. Screw the special effects house. Harry Winston, no, we don't need it. Let's go.
$125,000 budget. According to the art director, he said it should have been half that. But, inexperienced, you're kind of working at it. So, people spend a little bit more money. But, excellent. Financed by the mob, who stole all the money. But, that's another story. This next one.
Worth selling.
Yes, it is. This next one, I have 3 steelbook copies by Incident. I have the Blu-ray, I have the 4K, and then thanks to some German superfans who recognized that the cut being shown on TV in Germany was uncut and different from the famous original version, Universal Studios had egg on their face because they realized that for better part of 50 years or 40 years, they were putting out the censored for TV version on all forms of home media instead of the original uncut version with an alternate take of the famous shower scene. And that is Hitchcock's Psycho. Only 73 seconds of additional footage in the uncut version, but it works. The bulk of that footage is from when Norman discovers her in the bathroom after he's killed her, and he's absolutely shocked, and it just feels a little more eerie, a bit more graphic, and a couple more graphic shots from the shower. So it's like, I wonder because there's a documentary called 7852 about all these filmmakers dissecting the shower scene. It's like, well, that's technically not correct now, because once you see the uncut version, it's a different take of the scene. But, look at the back, how you see the house there. I love that they kept this house up at Universal Studios Hollywood. And if you ever go to Hollywood, I highly recommend going to Universal Studios on the backlot tram tour. What's really neat about this house is that it's just a facade, and it's an optical illusion, because when you drive in front of the motel, which for some reason the motel set has been rebuilt a lot over the years, but when you drive up the hill, the house, it's like this illusion because it's not anywhere near as big as it looks like on screen. It's actually a lot smaller. and it's just forced perspective from the camera. So it's really cool. When you go up and go past it, and then you look behind it after you pass it, and it's just a big steel facade with all these steel bars holding it up. There's nothing inside because the interior, of course, was shot on sound stages. But that's so cool. And you even get to go to the lagoon from Creature from the Black Lagoon, the back lake that they did all the underwater scenes in when you drive by in the train. It's so cool. So I highly recommend people do that. I'm sure you guys have seen Psych. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and everything that has been influenced by that. I mean, how many different shower scenes have you seen in other things that are just, this?
Apparently that was the first movie which actually had a scene like that in a bathroom. Because that was like taboo. Oh, you don't have scenes that set in the bathroom in American movies. Oh, it's taboo. We can't talk about this. But that was like the first time. Like when she goes in and flushes away the evidence of her crime in the toilet. That was the first time people saw a running toilet in a movie, in an American movie, because, we can't show that type of stuff on TV. But Hitchcock's like, of course we can.
Like, why can't we? It's like, well, it took us until The Mandalorian to see a refresher in Star Wars. It's like, why do we not? I don't know.
This next one by Shyamalan is a recent one, and it wasn't that good. I love the concept, but it wasn't executed very well. But the steelbook looked amazing, and that's Fold. See all these people falling through.
I thought it was a very, very creepy film.
It was. Some of the things didn't follow its own logic as well. Some of the dialogues, performances weren't great, but I really liked the reveal of what's actually going on and just how creepy it is.
Oh yeah, that's the I think the poster I remember seeing.
Yeah. This is that's. So you saw that when you liked it.
Yeah, I did. I think it's M. Night Shyamalan had a rocky middle part of his career, but I think he's started to come back in pretty good form. I'd say pretty much since Split, I think he's had no terrible films after having a really...
Well, Split, Glass, and then Trap, which you can just skip it. Is a new one. But yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I did see Knock at the Cabin, though.
Oh, that's right. He did Knock at the Cabin. Yeah, the performances that were very good, very well directed.
Yeah, that was a very tense, very worthwhile film.
Dave Bautista was great in that.
And then kind of in the middle, he went like more actiony as opposed to like suspense and horror, because like After Earth.
Oh yeah, I've still not seen that actually.
Yeah, don't watch it.
Don't. I have, but I mean, I love like the twist ending that's Shyamalan's thing, and if that's the scariest, like The Sixth Sense, you're like, whoa, holy shit. And then the misdirection on Signs, I enjoyed.
Yeah, I think
that's his best one.
It's my favorite of his films. I think he had a hat trick with The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs. And if he made no films after that, I'd still think he's one of the best directors in the genre ever, just because of those three films. They're all very, very different. But The Sixth Sense is the best ghost story in modern times by far.
Yeah.
Unbreakable is one of the best. This isn't a spoiler.
I don't even know how you qualify that.
24-year-old film, but I think it's one of the best comic book heroic stories ever
it's
made.
It's a comic book adjacent.
Yeah. It's like right there.
Yeah.
Mr. Glass and David Dunn. With all the comic booky. So it's like a movie about comic books before that was a big thing.
Exactly.
Which also makes it really good.
Yeah.
And
how ahead
Sixth
of the
Sense and
curve
Signs
was.
just came to 4K this month. Finally.
I would
this next one,
consider getting Signs in 4K. I love that film.
Oh yeah.
That's
This one
rewatchable.
also more recent by Jordan Peele. Nope.
See, Nope and The Black Phone I'm planning to watch in the next week.
So Nope borrows a lot from Jaws, but I love how the alien, all of the symbols in the movie is evoking original cinema. Like, there's a line in the movie where this character's like, for the next hour, you will be amazed. And the edit is exactly 1 hour left for the whole movie. They made sure.
That's cool.
And it has some really good tension in it and suspense and horror. And the way that the monster kind of looks like an old school camera from the 1890s, and how it has a lot to say about film in general, which is an actual like celluloid film. So it was really interesting how they juxtaposed that. So that was a very unique film. That was released in the summer, a summer release actually. So that was, okay.
Okay, so here's a horror movie that I don't know if I can recommend or not, but I kind of am recommending. I'm hoping you two know something about it. This is one that scared me so much as a child, I have not watched it since. Okay, I saw this movie, I was probably 8 years old, maybe 10. I probably didn't see it when it first came out. Is Dreamscape, 1984. That's Dennis Quaid. It's got a lot of people in it. I just remember this. It's so the premise is I think it's the president of the United States is like having nightmares or something, and these experts have to come into it to try and figure this out. So they're like in his dreams, in the dreams, somebody comes into your dreams. I don't know, just the critters and the creatures and the things that showed up in the dreams, like scared the holy hell out of me, and I've never watched it since. It was like, I don't know. But yeah, a huge cast from there. It's Dennis Quaid, Kate Capshaw, Christopher Plummer, Max von Sydow. Okay. So George Wendt is it? I didn't even remember that. But so either of you ever seen that one?
I haven't.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
See,
I do want to see it.
You
sold it to me now.
Makes me wonder now. Yeah. Now I kind of want to, but I still kind of don't. Like, look at it. I looked it up. Is it streaming? It is apparently free on like Tubi and a couple other places. So
I'll watch it there then.
It's there.
Sure. Maybe we need a watch party for that one.
As long as we can do the watch party with like this is me.
Yeah. However you want.
It might surprise you looking back on it today. Maybe it won't be as scary.
Oh, it probably isn't. It's probably extraordinarily cheesy. It was 1984, and
that's the thing. I remember seeing images of John Carpenter's The Thing, and just knowing it's not the kind of horror film I ever want to see. And that's why I had put it off for so long, even though I know it's iconic and a cult classic and highly regarded. I don't know if it was it acclaimed when it came out? Or is that why you said John Carpenter's career took a nosedive?
No, his career tanked because that movie was not well received at all. It bombed, and all the critics hated it. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's an excellent movie.
Wow, I don't know how that. I'm trying to imagine being alive at a time when that would have happened, because having just watched it, the gore and the grotesque imagery and the actual horror of the thing itself, as it assimilates different parts of different organisms, it's a horrifying idea. It's an idea that you see repeated in other attempts in the genre. Like it has a real Cronenberg feel to it, and also reminds me a lot of the entire monster arc in the third season of Stranger Things. Is basically The Thing. It's something that just grotesquely accumulates other humans and become this gigantic, visceral ball of horror. But it looks better in John Carpenter's The Thing than it looks in a 2019 series on Netflix in Stranger Things.
How do you feel about the 2011 remake?
Nah, they went CGI the whole time, and it just looked bad. And they went all like Blair Monster thing right out of the gate rather than doing it slow reveals. But it was all CG. And I think when they tried to redo the blood test scene, they did it with teeth fillings. I thought that was unique. That was good. But for the most part, and you get to go inside the alien ship under the ice. But it was like retreading, but with CGI. It's like, no, the reason it didn't have the same sense of paranoia that the first one had, and it didn't have the thing.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's the paranoia. It's the uncertainty. It's the quiet chill as people look left and right between each other's
Yeah.
faces, and you don't know who to trust. You don't know who.
And it didn't have Ennio Morricone's score until the very end of the movie. And it's like that score is iconic. It sets the whole tone for the film.
It's a terrifying soundtrack.
It is.
So do you liken it to Jaws, where the shark didn't work, so they had to make it more suspenseful with with
Well,
the
in the
music?
thing that the effects worked, it's just that wasn't the primary motivator. It's like it was a movie about paranoia and how they all start turning on each other.
I also think it's really good how they use the technology at the time to create suspense. So when you have, is it Blair, the character who's in the computer terminal, locks himself off, and then he types into the computer. It shows him like clacking away on this big old-fashioned keyboard, which is great. I almost wanted to
back
pause
in the time when everybody thought computers could tell them the answers to everything.
Yeah, and it gives him like a probability of other members of the crew being infected, 75%, and then likelihood of this organism spreading and basically conquering the entire planet. And it's like it would happen in 21,000 days, and it's just like crazy.
Yeah.
The way the computer punches each line out as well, it has you.
Oh yeah, like it's a super genius.
Yeah. But I had no idea the 2011 one had Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Joel Edgerton, which is
it's
Star Wars adjacent.
Yeah, it's a good cast. It was just sometimes some things shouldn't be remade just because you can and you have more technology. If it
that was a prequel about the Norwegian camp.
Okay.
Because it's lining up with everything that McCready discovers when they go visit the Norwegian camp where they first find the thing. And so you see how it's kind of matching up with it because it's a prequel. It's like, oh, that's kind of fun, but it's still all CGI and it doesn't have a good soundtrack. And yeah. So, yeah. I know that Carpenter wanted to do a sequel, and he's like, oh, I'll explain Keith and Kurt's aging by saying it's frostbite or something. But the studio didn't want to pay for it. So.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. These next two, another Stephen King double feature, more recent ones. We have It Chapter 1, an excellent movie. I liken this to being like an R-rated version of The Goonies. That's just that. It. And then, of course, It Chapter 2. Not as good as Chapter 1. They shoehorned the kids in there, which they didn't need to do. And it just didn't do as good of a job at manifesting the existential fears that adults have that kids don't. But the first one was very, very good. So it's there. This is another 80s one. We like 80s.
I am here for the 80s movies.
Fright Night.
I don't know that that's one that I've seen.
I heard the remake with Colin Farrell was actually pretty good, but this is the original. I love how they don't have any text on the cover. It's just like a classic haunted house, ghost, vampire type story. And werewolves and monsters. And it's kind of fun, but it's also, horror. Maybe it says more about me. I don't know. I did buy that. But and what do you know? Another John Carpenter movie on our list because it's just the master just keeps it coming. This is a great one as well. The Fog. See how the eyes kind of catch if you shine it just right. You could see the eyes flaming red coming out of the monster here. When I turn
So this was after The Thing.
No, this was before. This is 1980. This is after Halloween.
Oh, okay.
They filmed this near me down at Point Reyes. The story was a little convoluted, but and the characters I didn't really care much about them, but it was so atmospheric and creepy. And the effects were again really good. And he uses mostly a lot of sound, like when the lighthouse keeper hears all the monsters outside trying to barricade themselves in, as the cursed crew of lepers are coming. But I think it's again a movie that's kind of underrated, but I think it's pretty good. Worth checking out for sure.
I'm sorry, I'm one behind and I'm looking at Fright Night and that's like Christopher Lee is in that.
Oh yeah, they had a good cast. The Fog also had both Jamie Lee Curtis and Nancy Kyes, both featured in Halloween, of course.
Yeah, and Fright Night again, Chris Sarandon, Jack Skellington
Yeah.
himself.
Yes.
Hmm.
Oh, that's him on the back cover. See, that's Chris Sarandon right there.
Nice.
Okay.
But yeah, The Fog, that's another seminal classic. And let's see, these last 5 are just interchangeable, really. The Friday the 13th movies. This is the remake from 2009. You got the original with Kevin Bacon. This is just standard Blu-ray. I didn't upgrade to 4K. And then we got part 2, which is the first one where Jason shows up as the killer with the burlap sack on his head. You're doomed. You're all doomed. Let's see, part 3, where he gets the hockey mask. Be right back. And the final chapter, which was not the final chapter, but
it almost never is.
Appeared from the morgue.
The interchangeability of those, I'm glad you said that. That's what because you're saying, oh, he gets the hockey mask in this is where he appears with the thing. It's like, I don't remember that. And I enjoy the original movie. It's like, that's where your horror movie tropes, that's where Scream came from, is that kind of thing. But having seen 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and you don't remember, oh, this happened in this one, oh, that happened in that one. It's just like, okay, here we go. Friday the 13th, Jason the hockey mask coming after everybody with a knife.
Mm-hmm. That's right, because the first one, it's his mom. Spoiler alert. This one was more recent cosmic horror from the 90s. Needed a definite rewrite and a better director. Event Horizon.
Yes, I enjoyed that movie. That, again, good cast.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Gio.
That film really unsettled me when I saw it. I wasn't ready for what the film was about. I didn't actually know it was a horror film. I thought it was a sci-fi film. So when that...
Well, it is. It's both.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And it reminds me very much, I don't know which one came first, of The Sphere.
Mm-hmm. That was later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, earlier. So I'm sorry. That's right. The Sphere was 96.
Sphere was
actually, it might have been around the same time. I was thinking.
They're very similar in my.
It was 1998. Was Event Horizon 97?
Yeah.
Then Event Horizon was first.
Oh, okay. First, okay.
Yeah, Sphere is 1998.
Oh, okay.
So I'll tell you what Event Horizon reminded me of. It reminded me of the very little bits of the Doom video game story that I remember knowing from playing the game. And yeah, let's not talk about Doom, the actual film. Well, we can. It's kind of a thing. But the most recent versions of the Doom video game franchise have really jumped on that kind of Event Horizon feeling really well, and it's not just a first-person shooter dressed in Halloween type costume. It's actually a heavy sci-fi action horror modern day experience, which is really fun. If anyone's into gaming and hasn't played the Doom remakes, they're incredible.
This is one that's based on a wonderful children's series of scary stories that had the most nightmare fuel drawings that you could imagine, and that was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Now, they didn't do this as an anthology film with adapting certain stories straight up, because Guillermo del Toro says that an anthology film is only as strong as its weakest entry, which is kind of true. But I didn't care for the climax as much. But it was a good little horror film that recreates some of the classic stories that are. But if you see that book series, it's like, oh my god! I can see why a lot of parents wanted this stuff out of the kids' class, children's libraries. They were good.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the 90s, though, so you have to be a 90s kid for that.
I've never come across that one before, actually. I'll look out for it.
Yeah, but the book series was pretty good. Some of the stories were just, man, that's just sad and horrible, It's like really like little campfire stories, kind of. Here's another Stephen King one, a newer one, Pet Sematary.
Mhm.
I like this one. Good atmosphere, good chiller. Made some substantial changes from the source material, but I actually kind of liked it. A lot of people didn't, though. That's with Jason Clarke and John Lithgow. This one is an absolute. Yeah.
That's a remake of there was another one. That's the 2019 version, right?
Yes.
And there was another one in 88, 89.
Yeah, I think the one from 88 or 89 was a miniseries, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it was just a movie.
Possibly. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
But yeah.
This next one, arguably perhaps the first horror film ever made. German Expressionism horror, and that is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Filmed in 1919, released February 1920. It incorporates a twist ending. One of the first movies ever that had a twist ending, which is pretty cool. The creepy somnambulist villain, and you can barely see him up in the corner here, but Dr. Caligari, who served as inspiration for the design of the Batman Returns version of the Penguin, because he's got that same, wearing the little dicky with the coat, and he's got the top hat, and this looks really 19th century type appearance to him. I watched this for the first time in film school for Masterpieces of the Cinema in February 2014, and it is a great movie. And they actually, even though it's 1920, they did use little color tunes where they dyed some of the film's panels afterwards to give it really psychedelic type imagery in some of the scenes. And because it's German Expressionism, you have these very deliberately fake, distorted looking sets that's sort of suggesting to the viewer that maybe not as always as it seems.
See, that's very interesting to find out about that. I would have said, if you'd asked me what is the very first horror movie ever made, I would have gone with Nosferatu.
That's 1922.
See, but after that, so that definitely.
Yeah, but Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, that's a classic. That's a right. This next one's more recent. It's kind of fun. It's funny. People like it. It's a great midnight movie that's shown down at the Crest every once in a while, and that is The Lost Boys.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Santa Cruz, supposedly the murder capital of California. I guess I don't know, or murder capital of the world, according to the movie.
Yeah. Well,
very fun 80s movie. My favorite Corey Feldman character in the movie. And what's his name? Kiefer Sutherland makes a great bad guy.
Yeah, he does.
And Jason Patrick makes a good protagonist.
And so many little things about vampire lore, about the inviting them in and the dogs, and so many little things in that movie. And I mean, I haven't been there in recent, but it was a really cool kind of destination place you could go to like the wooden coasters on the Santa Cruz boardwalk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just like, oh, let's go visit. That's like visiting the Goonies house.
Another one I have that's Criterion that's not in reach is a Vampire from 1932, which I actually like more than Nosferatu.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the story and stuff, it didn't have as much overacting in it, but it was also a very creepy, eerie vampire story that I think I would highly recommend. In a similar vein, a more recent one by Robert Eggers, one of my new favorite directors, The Lighthouse.
I've been wanting to see this film such a long time.
Shot it in black and white with century-old, 120-year-old lenses to give it that old school feel. So this guy's legit, and it's like, you can see like the mermaid in the water. Well, it's like a comedy, and it's a horror, and it's all kinds of crazy.
And it's the redemption of the sparkly vampire, right?
Well, he had been doing a lot of great films in that decade. But this one, this should have been up for all sorts of awards. It got snubbed, but c'est la vie.
It happens a lot to horror films, doesn't it?
It does. And then here's the more famous version, the one that a lot of people grew up with, Tim Curry as Pennywise. He was really great in that role.
Very terrifying.
I do think the atmosphere in this one is better than the atmosphere in the movies, because this one just feels more dreamlike and eerie and just creepy, which it really needs. Just look, you can see why kids are afraid of clowns. This one's a great midnight movie. A lot of script isn't that great. A lot of great twists. Atmosphere is insane. Some of the roles were miscast, but that is, of course, Saw, the original.
I was just about to say, I was wondering whether to say after your comment about kids and clowns. I was going to say, well, then there's the Saw franchise, which I just watched in the past week properly for the first time.
Really?
The original. Yep, the original.
What'd you think?
It was great. It's not as out and out gory and horrifying as I think your mind makes you think it would be or is. Or maybe,
or are you desensitized because you're just seeing it for the first time now, and would it have been all as gory?
Well, you can really see, the low budgetness of this movie compared to the sequels, particularly when the character starts sawing off his leg. You only see the beginning of it, like they put the little blood tube behind the hacksaw, so you see a little bit of blood. But then you don't actually see anything else when he's doing it, and then he throws it, and it's like clearly a rubber, fake,
Yeah.
But because they filmed all the stuff in the bathroom chronologically in 6 days, because they just didn't have any time.
Yeah.
And this was at these warehouses not far from Dodger Stadium, actually. But I love the twist ending. I'm like, man, that's so good, and like, because it's like that's kind of what the title is referring to. It's not really about saw blades. It's about, hey, the guy watches, and it's like it's like, well, where is he? It's like, shit. It's such a great ending.
I'll be honest, I was suspicious of the body in the middle of the floor from the beginning, and I hadn't actually heard direct spoilers about this film, despite it being 20 years old now, which I'm really glad I had not heard, because there are other films from that kind of time period where just in pop culture, what's happened in that film, even if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I'd say things like The Others and Signs and The Sixth Sense, these you kind of know if you are interested in movies or film, almost by osmosis culturally, the details get leaked into you. But I'm glad I didn't know anything about Saw other than I think it's the genesis of the first escape room. That's my reading into it.
You see, what I would do if I would switch the roles around, I would have Danny Glover, who played the detective, playing the Dr. Gordon role instead of Carrie Elways. I would have Ken Lung, who played the other detective, the assistant, playing the Adam role, because I think those two are better actors than Carrie Elways and Lee Winnell, who was the writer who insisted that he be in the movie. It's like, some of the dialogue is like, oh, he's not really a killer. He never killed anybody. Like, you're going to say that shit when you're chained up in a bathroom. But it was very good, and it relaunched Tobin Bell's career, which is pretty cool. This next one, another Robert Eggers film, an absolute classic that you must see. The Witch.
The Witch.
Black Phillip for president, by the way. Anya Taylor-Joy, this kind of launched her career as well. Excellent horror film. Ralph Ineson was excellent as the father. Have you two made a pact with this goat? He doesn't actually approve this 4K transfer. They put out a different one from Second Sight. This one he didn't care for, but I didn't know that, but I got it. But it's still an excellent film.
How do you know when it's a 4K transfer that's worth picking up or not?
There's certain YouTube channels that I watch that I trust, or other. Blu-ray.com has very comprehensive 4K reviews where they get into the nitty-gritty of it, and it's like whether it's any good or not, or whether they go too far. But it came to light that the studio sort of did this, and they didn't get the director or the DP to supervise it, and he thought they darkened things too much and brightened other things. Because 4K does, like, it deepens the blacks to be super dark, and it brightens the daytime brights like really bright. I still thought the transfer was fine. So I haven't seen the new Second Sight version that he actually personally supervised. But certain 4Ks you can't. Like I have a Samsung, which is considered lower end for 4K, and my newest 4K horror pickup, which I can't reach right now, Nightmare on Elm Street, didn't look like it didn't look the way that all the reviewers were saying it looked compared to the Blu-ray, which I already had. But I think that also depends, because I don't have like an OLED or a QLED that's super bright, really top of the line. I don't have that. I can't afford that shit. So it varies. Here's another horror film that came out last year. It debuted at the festival circuit 2 years ago, but I think this is very good. It's from Australia, from these two guys who had a YouTube channel, a comedy channel of all things. This one's called Talk to Me, about kids who use demonic possession as a party trick, and of course it goes horribly awry.
Well, that's the basis of like the Ouija movies.
Except this is infinitely better and better crafted in every way than those types of films. The tension, the suspense, the awkwardness, and the almost like Hereditary level, like oh shit, like awkward, like how could stuff that you're watching in this. Really good. I highly recommend it. Actually, good scary movie. Another one which is a bit. I have two versions of this. This is Midsommar by Ari Aster. I love the cinematography. I love the setting. I love the atmosphere. I didn't really like the main characters though, so I didn't really care when things start happening to them, which is not great.
It's like I don't care if you live or if you die. So yeah.
Yeah. Then this is another one by Ari Aster as well. This is yes. No. What the fuck's the guy? Why am I blanking on his name? Alex Garland. That's right. Who made Ex Machina and Annihilation? Rory Kinnear is the creepy weirdo. It's like a more modern type of unsettling type horror take, but that came out a couple years ago.
Weirdo for sure. Well,
here's one of Steven Spielberg's first films. Very famous. Just got a 4K transfer, and that is I haven't opened it yet. That is Duel.
Oh
yeah, a man being chased by the mad trucker.
Right.
There have been knockoffs of movies like this, but to varying degrees of success. But Duel is quite good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know that I would have pegged that as a horror movie, but then when I think about it as not a horror movie, I don't know what I would have thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Well, how do you define a horror film? If it's horrifying, does it qualify? I think it does.
Yeah.
I had no idea that would be in your collection, but when you were describing it before you showed it to me, I was like, yeah, that's Duel. That's Duel coming up.
It's gotta be.
I also remember that in our last conversation, Dave and I thought Jaws was one of the best horror films ever made, and you were like, yes, to one of the best films I've made, but no, it's not a horror film.
Yeah, I didn't pull it off the shelf, actually.
I
probably should.
There you go.
Now that you mention it and it's right here, I might as well just show it. But
okay.
I mean, how many people has that made scared to go in the water?
True. It's like, but here's the thing: movies can have scary concepts in it, but it's about the execution and whether it feels scary while I'm watching it. Because I'm sorry, but those three personalities on that fishing boat for the last hour of that movie that's an adventure movie. That is a fun adventure film. But in other words of great horror, we have The Wicker Man, the original, of course. I love this very pagan-like artistic cover that they did for this.
Yeah, it's really eye-catching.
It is. This is a film that when Christopher Lee first heard the title and was offered to him, he knew exactly what it was. And they're like, how did you know? He's like, well, I know my history. But it's funny because, I mean, you look at that original iconic poster of the silhouette of the Wicker Man, you know what's going to happen. But it still manages to be unsettling the earlier watching it. And the protagonist, Sergeant Howie, is not a sympathetic character. He's a real asshole. But you still want him to solve the mystery of the missing girl, and you're wondering why nobody else seems to care that this little girl is missing. And we have to say, yeah, Sergeant Howie's an asshole, but we still want him to save the kid. And you start figuring out what's going on, and how the Lord Summerisle's daughter is trying to seduce him because she knows why he's there and doesn't want him to become the sacrifice. So it's and Christopher Lee said that was his all-time favorite role. He said that he absolutely loved that role more than anything he ever played. Was
that was before he was interviewed. That was before he was interviewed about Saruman and Count Dooku, so we can pinch of salt.
So, do you think The Wicker Man is where we got Twin Peaks?
That's a good question.
I mean, it just that kind of the policeman that's the like straight arrow whatever trying to solve it, coming into this eclectic strange community with all of these characters, with all of these personalities.
Another one from 1973 by the late great William Friedkin, The Exorcist. Just came to 4K last year. We have both versions of the movie on 4K. He really regards this movie more as a family drama. I saw this film for the first time in a packed theater last year. It was fun. But
I've still
everybody
not seen
seems to
it.
think this is a scary movie. I didn't really think this was scary, but I liked it. But I figured people would want me to show it off if I had it for a horror, because a lot of people think it's horrifying.
Well, and I think because of some of the people that you have in there, that Max von Sydow is in there, it's like, okay, that if he's in the movie, it's a horror movie.
Yeah, maybe. He was in a lot of good Ingmar Bergman films that weren't horror films, but
and
including The Virgin Spring, but that is a horror film. I have that as well, but I can't take that out because it's in a huge box set.
But then at that point too, you got to think about, you saw this for the first time last year and you didn't think it was scary. There's been a lot of things that out in 1973, there was, the stuff that they were putting on screen, the horror movies from the entire previous decade, from the 60s, are laughable at this point. The Blob, stuff
That's
like
classic. That's not, yeah.
I'm saying, but is it scary?
Right. Well, that's kind of what we said about that's what we've been saying about these Universal horror films. That they're not scary, but they're iconic.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, other movies are
more.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, those Universal horror films, I know they're like creature feature flicks in a way, but I count them more as gothic films, not really horror films. That makes sense.
That's true. That makes sense.
Like all those beasts and vampires, werewolves, Dracula, etc.
And here's one by Wes Craven. It rests on 13 acres of earth over the very center of hell. Can anybody guess the title? It is his very original first film, The Last House on the Left. An exploitation schlock film. Terrible dialogue, terrible script, but it has, like Texas Chainsaw, it has this home movie type quality to it that makes it very disturbing. And he follows up the same theme of this movie with his follow-up film, which I have also here, The Hills Have Eyes, about these depraved hill people which prey on tourists who stop over in the Joshua Tree National Park. And the theme that he's playing around with is the idea that when society catches monsters, they do more horrible things to the monsters than to punish them than the monsters did to them, which is an interesting idea to play around with. But he only really did it those 2 times. I know when they filmed in Joshua Tree, they illegally burned one of the trees and got away with it because they didn't tell anybody they were going to do it. But it's okay because more trees grew in their place later on. I got Michael Berryman as Jupiter. Is just he's great. You got Papa Jupiter there, and then Last House. You got Krug, and it's just so depraved. This is the movie that the tag was like, "It's only a movie. It's only a movie." People thought this was so horrible, trying to get it banned everywhere. So it's just 2 of Wes Craven's more shocking films for sure.
There were a couple of side storylines in Red Dead Redemption 2 that basically were the storyline in both those films. I remember coming across, because in that game it's an open world game and you're riding on horseback and you're already heading towards your main mission, and then you have like these incidental moments that appear as question marks on the map, and you go along to investigate, and it ends up being like a little ramshack family that are saying grace before dinner, and you start conversing with somebody, and very quickly it becomes one of those films. And you have to just get the heck out of there and fight for survival. Yeah.
I mentioned this one earlier, Hereditary. One of the most disturbing, awkward scenes in any modern movie. I'm sure if those who've seen this movie know what I'm talking about. Have you seen it, Dave?
I have not seen Hereditary, no.
Oh, I won't tell you that.
I haven't either.
The list of films that is growing over here on my pad that I'm like, ooh, I need to be.
Okay, I'll tell you one thing. Toni Collette got robbed. She should have won the Oscar for Best Actress that year. She was so good in this movie. But the Oscars have always been, Academy has always been prejudiced towards horror movies as a genre, but she was excellent in this film. Definitely earned an Oscar that they did not give her. Here's another one from the 80s. This is kind of a fun one. Another one with Rob Bottin's makeup designs, and that's The Howling. That's, of course, another 80s classic. Imagine your worst fear a reality. werewolf vampire type film. Werewolves. But this has got stacked with tons of bonus features on it. As you see, all sorts of featurettes and stuff there. But this was put out by Studio Canal as like an independent 4K release. The studio wouldn't do it, so they farmed it out to get the rights. But that's a fun 80s werewolf movie. I like it.
What's your thoughts on American Werewolf in London?
I didn't really like that one. I like the beginning when they're on the moors, where it's really kind of eerie and creepy. The makeup, the work they did for the transformation scenes are amazing, but the bulk of the story wasn't really scary. I was kind of bored with it. I didn't like the protagonist, the lead guy. He's just kind of a bland character. Right. I liked his buddy, played by Griffin Dunn, a lot more when he keeps showing up and haunting him like it's a ghost. It's great. I didn't think the climax was very strong. But I could see why a lot of people like that movie. But it's just not. It never was something that I was very taken with.
Okay.
Other than the
Londoners' thoughts.
I am a terrible Londoner. I haven't seen the film.
Oh.
Yeah. But if it's on streaming, yeah.
And John Landis made that movie, except it wasn't a comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, it had humorous moments in it, but yeah, poor film. This is a more recent classic that a lot of people liked by David Robert Mitchell called It Follows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you have sex with somebody and it passes on this paranoia or insanity to somebody else. But I think it would have made a better short film because as the film progresses, they don't seem to know how to deal with how to stop it. And then they start breaking their own story logic and it gets a little ridiculous by the climax. But the first half hour or so is really creepy.
That's one of the things about, horror movie tropes anyway. It's they're taking that and weaponizing it, which is you have sex in a horror movie and you're gone. You're dead.
Right.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. It's really good meta commentary. As well as being like obvious metaphor for STDs and stuff.
I think they've taken the rules from Scream and they've like, hey, what would happen if we gave it a reason?
Yeah, that film has such a shocking opening, though. I'd really recommend if you're uncertain about about watching the whole film, just the first 5 minutes of that, I will never forget. Very, very memorable in a disturbing way. But I think that film manages to convey a sense of inevitable dread really well. Mm-hmm. It's not like a jump scare type film at all, but I think it's one that stays in your mind for a long time afterwards, which I'd argue is evidence of a good horror film.
Mm-hmm. So I got a few films by Dario Argento here. I got Deep Red, about a guy who witnesses an axe murder, and he rushes in. It's like, did he see the perpetrator? Didn't he? He decides to be an amateur sleuth to try and solve it. It's a really weird, creepy, somewhat supernatural type film by Dario Argento. He also did this one, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, a murder that takes place in a museum, and again, amateur sleuths trying to solve it, but some really dark, Italian gallows stuff starts happening. Another one up on the shelf, Cat o' Nine Tails. That's another classic by Dario Argento. Horror, of course. And maybe one you're more familiar with, another Hitchcock classic. I think this is the one that has most rewatchability to it. The Birds.
Yes. You're scared of everything creature horror film. It's like, let's make a movie about birds. Let's make giant spiders. Let's make bees.
Yeah, and this one is also. God, look at that final shot. How they got all those birds to behave like that. That was filmed also near me down at also Point Reyes, or Bodega Bay in that area. But yeah, that's a classic. It's like, what can you say about it? We mentioned this earlier, so I'll just show off the steelbook because it does look pretty cool. It's Alien.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Alien.
We've talked about that one. That movie comes up all the time on this show because that's one of the few where the sequel surpassed the original. Come on.
Yeah, I think that's 2v1. It's always you and I against that one.
No. Alien.
The original's better.
We prefer the Aliens.
And then that was like the curse of the threequel that shows up again too. It's like, no.
Yeah. I've actually never watched Aliens 3 properly from beginning to end. I will do at some point.
Here's another more recent double feature, Quiet Place Parts 1 and 2.
Yeah.
A Part 2 I actually kind of like better a bit than Part 1, but they're both good movies about these aliens that come to Earth and they can hear you, so you have to be dead silent to avoid detection.
Very good films, and I think very rewatchable as well.
Yeah.
And there's another sequel, prequel. There's a prequel to that.
Day One.
Yeah, Day One.
Day One came out this year, did it? Or was it last year?
Yeah, I saw it this year. I didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out this year. I didn't. Was it this year? Yeah, it was. I didn't care for it. And then, of course, this is another classic. This is from 1971. Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick. Yeah, that I could say this qualifies as a horror film.
Yeah, I mean, iconic enough that there were Star Wars, A Clockwork Orange figures. Was it? I think it was that they hang on. Let me see if I'm just talking out of my ass again. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, A Clockwork Orange, whose characters appear, the Droogs, appeared on the sidelines of the basketball court in the Space Jam sequel. It's like, did they not? I don't know. It's like, why are you putting a bunch of kids? Yeah, I don't know about that. Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola.
I love that movie. That is that's the so much of the 80s 90s transition, that 90s horror, everything. It's, it's got all the people. It's like Keanu being his speed Keanu, and
I think I would have recast that role, but
well, yeah, but that's why it's hilarious, is him doing the British accent. You're sitting there looking at Ted Theodore Logan in the, oh yeah, that guy could be the Dracula dude. That's the whole point.
Gary Oldman was great as Dracula, especially when he's masquerading as the young Dracula moving around London. He was great, and it actually sticks a bit closer to the novel than a lot of other adaptations.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that I really like about all the vampire lore in there. Okay, he's got to have the dirt. He's got bought the Abbey so he can be there. He comes across on the ship and everybody on the ship dies. No reflection. He's using all the gold, silver, gold flatware or whatever. Is a lot of stuff. That's one of those movies of the period that just Winona Ryder in anything dark and scary ever. Oh, cast her. She's got to be in that movie.
Yeah. Another Stephen King classic, this one by Brian De Palma, based on King's first novel, Carrie. Oh my God, look at all the insanity. Sissy Spacek, who was really big back in those days. Yeah, that's another totally crazy, completely insane movie. I saw a meme going around that was really funny, and it said, "Imagine if Divine from the John Waters films played Carrie's mom in an adaptation of Carrie by John Waters." I thought that would be great.
Ooh.
Jeez. You guys mentioned this one earlier, but another King adaptation, Christine.
Yes.
I like how they're using the old school, like, newsprint poster, old school 80s poster for this. If you're looking for a standard vehicle, then Christine isn't for you. In her vibrant hot rod red and cream, the wonderful new Christine that actually kills the competition. Literally. Think we're kidding? Believe it. Even in the smallest of alleys. Introducing the 365 horsepower, 350 cubic inch self-healing V8 engine, a machine providing the greatest display of returning history. With updated self-inflating tires, front suspension, this new Christine really corners on rails no matter who you are chasing down. You don't just drive Christine, she drives you. Don't wait until some punk busts your glasses. Let Christine demonstrate to you and those punks what terrible things happen when they mess with the wrong car. Oh God!
Wow, that they went into a lot of depth. Like,
but I like that. It's like a car ad for in the car.
Yeah, it's great.
But that's that very clever marketing for that. That's another fun John Carpenter from '83. And then, of course, I mentioned this earlier. I finally got into it at the bottom of the other pile. A Nightmare on Elm Street. I like that they put the old school Warner Brothers home video logo up in the corner here, the little blue with the white stripes, and the horror. They actually put the genre sticker on there, horror, and the little red band along the bottom, which is kind of interesting design. And then, of course, Freddy peering through. Of course, the 40th anniversary coming up on November 9th. Odd time, a surprising day to release a horror film, but it's of course, a genre classic. I mean, Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, Star Wars connection. Robert Englund is the one who gave Mark Hamill a Star Wars script and said, I think you should try this out. So we can thank Robert Englund for that, because he and Mark Hamill are still very good friends to this day. But yeah, I think the first one is obviously the best. The sequels, I mean, Dream Warriors had some really trippy images in there that really stuck with me for a long time. I didn't care for New Nightmare as much, because it was like, okay, you're basically just doing the original movie again with the novelty of saying, it's in the real world this time. It's like,
Right. And a lot of the excuses in the sequels for that were, we're better at blood and gore, or we're allowed to show more blood and gore, and we can just do the same thing again, but just throw entire vats full of pig's blood on people or something.
Well, at the time, New Line wasn't owned by Warner Brothers. It's an independent company. And Robert Shea says that, New Line Cinema is the house that Freddy built, because they kept greenlighting sequels because it was keeping the studio in business. Because they were largely involved in home video originally as opposed to films. So they just kept making all these movies until 94, which was the last one, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. But then they got Robert to come back for Freddy vs. Jason in 2003, which was the last time he played Freddy Krueger. And I'm thinking, there's so many great horror directors today. I think you could actually make another good Nightmare on Elm Street movie, but for the last 21 years, nobody's touched it. Well, I mean, they probably wouldn't have touched it again in Wes's lifetime, but now that Wes is gone, I'm surprised nobody's actually, because Robert's still out there, he's still acting, so.
Give a Nightmare on Elm Street movie to M. Night Shyamalan. It's like, what kind of twist is it? Yeah, okay. So he's like a shot-for-shot remake of the original or something, and then you get the twist.
Yes. And of course, the John Carpenter's Halloween. The night he came home. I think this is the best slasher ever made, because it's built on tension and suspense rather than blood, guts, and gore. And I think they actually did a good job getting you to care about most of the characters in the film. With the exception of
that completely and totally made Jamie Lee Curtis as the Scream Queen, and to the point where she goes all the way down the line to where she becomes the main character of the movie, I believe.
She does.
So,
this is the poster. I got framed and signed by Nick Castle, the Shape himself.
Yeah,
the original film. There's a lot of dust on this.
Would you consider the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be a slasher film?
Technically, I mean, it does have a few murders in it. I don't consider it a Chainsaw Massacre movie, because only one person dies by chainsaw in the movie. But it was, it was good. I have another copy of that from Scream Factory.
Oh, cool.
And then just go down the list. I got Halloween 2 here. I got the much maligned but now classic cult film Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, with that song that nobody wants to get stuck in their head. They should actually make these masks and sell them. I think they would be big sellers of Halloween if they actually made them. The warlock that wants to kill all the children on Halloween.
Could be. That's just not as popular as
Happy Halloween. Okay, I'm not gonna sing the song.
I haven't seen the film, so luckily that's I'm not at risk of having that song reemerge.
Happy Halloween, 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 happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock. Halloween 4, which was sort of a pretext to Halloween Kills, but this is a lot better. It actually had a love triangle in there, and you think that something's actually kind of resolved from it, but then it's like, oh no, the characters start getting killed, and then it goes out the window. And then we have the reboot trilogy, Halloween 2018, which wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. It had too much shit going on. And then some friends gave me the other two because they got them and they didn't like them. I'm like, I warned you, but they gave them to me for my collection. Halloween Kills, where he's killing somebody every practically 10 seconds, so there's no tension or suspense whatsoever. So it's just gore. and a bit tasteless for the ending. And then the atrocious Halloween Ends, which has an ending, a final showdown between the Shape and Laurie, which does not even hold a candle to their finale in H2O, which was so much better. But
well, and then you really get the middle sequels where that goes absolutely off the rail, like
5 and 6, yeah.
Resurrection.
Oh, that's another one, Resurrection, where, oh god, I heard that. So the story was that Jamie Lee Curtis threatened to quit H2O, like walk off the set when she found out they were planning on retconning Michael's death at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And they had to come up with a compromise. And they're like, oh, well, we'll retcon it at the beginning of the next movie so that if people want to, they could just watch H2O and be fine with it. And she agreed to come back to let herself be killed off in the beginning of Halloween Resurrection so they can continue the continuity and let Michael. And of course, they didn't continue the continuity because the movie was awful. But the real reason they didn't continue it was actually sad because the producer was murdered in the Jordanian terrorist bombings in 2003. He was there at a hotel with his daughter attending a wedding, and they were among the victims there. And the franchise went dormant for a while as a result. And eventually his son took over and decided to do a remake with Rob Zombie instead. But Resurrection was an awful movie. It's like the producer's thought process at that time, he's like, hey, son, what are the kids into these days? Like, oh, Busta Rhymes, Dad, and Tyra Banks. He's like, okay. So we went out and got them.
Well, there's your Star Wars adjacent, though, because Katie Sackhoff is in that movie.
She is. And
what?
That explores the internet. Oh, yeah, she was one of the college students who signs up to be... Because the idea is that they're all wearing webcams and they have to stay in Michael's house at night. And the Busta Rhymes character who's arranging all of this is secretly dressing up as Michael to try and scare them, but they don't know that the real Michael is there. It's stupid because the house is not a big house, right? There's no way any of this could be happening without anybody noticing. It requires you to completely suspend your disbelief to the end.
Yeah, the house is like, I don't know, it's less than 3,000 square feet easily over a couple of floors, and it's just like, no.
It's now, I believe, a dentist's office. They sold the house for $1 because it was going to be demolished because they were putting in new condos. The guy who bought it for $1 paid to have it moved down the street on the corner next to the train tracks right across the street from the hardware store in the original movie. And every Halloween, they actually open it up for fans to come in and take like selfies with a guy dressed up as Michael on the stairway, which is pretty cool that they actually let people do that. I would love to go to Halloween in Pasadena because they have the other Halloween locations walking around the streets. You can sit on the corner stoop with a pumpkin. Apparently the people who live there have pumpkins almost year round for fans to come by and pick them up off their porch and sit down and take a picture with it as long as you put it back on the porch when you're done.
And that's the one with the iconic like fade into the bushes. Like what?
That's another street corner. That's on another street. But the famous street where all the houses are at is way over in Hollywood off Sunset Boulevard. So
well, yeah, it's not like movie making is reality. Let's film a neighborhood across like 3 towns. And
what was funny about that also is that the exteriors of the houses on the main street where the movie takes place are different than the houses they used for the interiors. The interiors were actually next door to each other rather than being inside. So it's kind of funny, but it's great filmmaking. And now we go back to another Wes Craven franchise, Scream. Oh, wait, this isn't the right one. Of course, I grabbed the wrong. See, I fucking hate it when they retitle movies, reboot movies, legacy sequels, the same title as the original. It doesn't tell me which one it is. This is the original right here. Scream. With Ghostface. And do you like scary movies? The opening sequence with this is really good. It is tension. It's actually scary. The rest of the movie is like a Scooby-Doo whodunit type thing, and it's fun. And the ending is really shocking when you find out who the killers are. The fact that there's 2 killers, spoiler alert, is a shock to a lot of people. When you find out that what motivates them is it's like, oh, geez. And the studio had a real problem with it because even though they're being played by 26-year-olds, they're supposed to be teenagers. Yeah. And they're like, oh, we can't have this. This is bad. It's going to, all that kind of stuff. But that was a classic movie.
Well, and the fact that you take a really big actress at the time, you take Drew Barrymore, and you off her in the first, 15 minutes?
13 minutes. She originally got cast as Sidney Prescott. And 2 weeks before, I think it was 2 weeks before they started filming, she called up Wes. She's like, Wes, I have a better idea. How about I play Casey Becker and get killed at the beginning? And he's like, oh shit, the whole movie's going to fall apart. We're going to lose our funding because you're the reason that they're agreeing to fund the movie. And they eventually talked him around into it, and then they got Nev Campbell, and of course it worked.
Yeah.
So she had a great idea.
Because I mean, you take. I mean, Nev
It's like the
Campbell,
Psycho thing with Janet Leigh.
not the biggest name actress in that. It was Drew Barrymore, and you're done. And now all bets are off. You don't know. Everybody can die.
Mm-hmm. He, of course, followed that up with Scream 2. Not a scary movie, really. It's a fun movie. Yeah, they shipped this to me with this dent at the bottom. I'm kind of pissed off about that, but well. It says, "Hello, Sydney. Remember me?" This is the movie where you know who the killer is because 45 minutes in, one of the characters disappears and is gone for so long. It's like, oh, it's got to be you. And then there's a character set up as a foil to the Gale Weathers character, and it's like the fact that you're still alive past the halfway point means that you're in on it. It's like, but I was set at a college, so it's different. And then Scream 3, a movie which is like a self-parody in a way. They said it was kind of prescient because they have a character played by Lance Henriksen who's basically Harvey Weinstein.
It's very kind of fourth wall kind of.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere, Sydney, with the voice box thing, which was again ahead of its time, but a bit too much. But the weird thing about this is Wes Craven notoriously pushes back against the argument that conservatives and parents would push that horror movies turn people into psychos. We shouldn't, and he's pushing back that 100%. Movies aren't responsible. Yet the whole thesis of this movie is that a bad Hollywood experience is what kickstarted the events of the whole trilogy, which I thought was really funny. But this is a fun movie to watch. I mean, not scary, obviously, but it's funny. It's silly. It's definitely the whole Scooby-Doo gang. Another Star Wars connection. We have Carrie Fisher working in the archives, and they're like, "Aren't you?" "No, I look like her. I was up for that role, but I didn't get the role. You know why? You know who got the role? The one who slept with George Lucas."
There you go. So, do you think, based on like you're talking about the little Scooby-Doo gang, we saw the mystery is, I Know What You Did Last Summer? Is that a horror movie?
Yeah.
That's a movie which, again, the plot makes no sense. I agree with the scary movie parody that, what did the plot of New York, I Know What You Did Last Summer make any sense? Don't think so. Anybody remember the plot of that movie? No. We then have a Scream 4, does not yet have a 4K or steelbook. This was Wes Craven making fun of the very bland horror remakes of the 2000s. Yeah. And he deliberately had the cinematographer crank up the brightness so that even the outdoor scenes set in the daytime look they're shot on a soundstage because of how insanely bright it is and washed out and saturated the whole movie looks. And to me, that kind of hurts it, but I get what he's trying to comment on. And they do the remake trope thing, and the characters, the new kids, are commenting on that. The ghost face in this movie probably kills more people than, because usually they're tag teaming it.
The story of the thing, it's the sequels. The body count's got to be bigger.
Well, usually in these movies, when you have two killers, they take turns. In this one, the mastermind only kills one person, but the henchman is the one who kills everybody. I'm like, Jesus. That was then followed up with the reboot, which I was showing, Scream 5. This is after Wes Craven died. I thought this one was pretty good. It was they were too cheap to film in California because it's so damn expensive to film here now. So they rebuilt Stu's house on a stage in North Carolina. And you could tell it's inside a stage. Even the outside scenes are in a stage because the camera, when it backs out to show the house, doesn't show the top of it because the roof is sort of cut off. So it's because they didn't have the money to go to build the whole thing.
Level is North Carolina at that point was offering the film tax credit and everything. And I Know What You Did Last Summer filmed here. Is in and around Wilmington, North Carolina, Southport, North Carolina, that sort of those places. And
now my last one of today, the latest one, Scream 6. This one is not really satirizing anything. It's like, oh, we're gonna satirize sequels of legacy sequels. It's kind of like a requel to Scream 2. And there's a scene in this movie where the new Randy, the new horror expert, reasons that this is the killer trying to recreate the events of Scream 2. It's like, well, light bulbs should go off in your head. Who was the killer that time? Oh, maybe it's... But they're too stupid to do that because the plot demands that they not be smart enough to figure that out. And it wasn't really satirizing anything anymore. It just felt like it was just another sequel for the sake of having one.
It's the search for more money.
And they're not going to continue this continuity. And they're not going to continue with the same cast for stupid reasons because the studio Spyglass are stupid morons. so that's the end of that. But I don't know. What the hell did that go? Oh, yeah, but but apparently because they don't have the two actresses, Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera, coming back, they can afford to bring back Nev Campbell this time. So I guess that's a plus.
Well, and yeah, because Nev Campbell is going to be cheaper than Jenna Ortega at this point.
Yes. That was apparently one of the other reasons she left, is because Ortega left because of salary disputes. But,
Yeah.
But, again, it's a movie that, I mean, Wes made the first three because they each had something to say and make fun of or whatever. But since then, it's like, if you don't have anything to comment on, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it, because that's kind of the whole point of the franchise.
Well, yeah, but then you get the whole other level of, you've got Scream, but then you get Scary Movie, which is just taking everything that Scream did and like putting it up 14 notches and making it crazy.
Yeah.
It's so, we're a movie that's commenting on a movie that's commenting on other movies.
Yeah,
just let it go. All right, we are way long, but this is a topic that all three of us are very passionate about. We love movies, and we're in there. Let's kind of do some rapid fire. I thought of this idea a little earlier. Rapid fire stuff. We're gonna go favorite movies based on these different Halloween-y scary topics. All right. So favorite vampire movie.
Vampire from 1932.
Okay. Gio?
I Am Legend, 2007.
Aha. I already kind of said mine, which is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Love me some 90s horror, and Lost Boys is really up there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was close to saying that. And I need to see the Bram Stoker's Dracula properly. I've only seen a couple of scenes. I've not seen it beginning to end.
You should. It's a 90s treat.
Yeah, it's got loads of actors I love in it as well.
So. Favorite movie about witches?
The Witch.
I'll probably go with one of the Harry Potters.
Oh, see, those didn't even occur to me. Is my favorite movie about witches is not really a scary movie. I would go Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that works. Yeah. We don't think of that. I think the scariest witch film I know is The Witch, which is what counts it. But yes.
Blair Witch Project, maybe. But like I said, you think of witch, you think of iconic, you think of what do you picture when you see a witch? I see the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
So favorite mummy movie?
Favorite what? Mummy movie? The Mummy from 1999. The
Mummy The Mummy Returns.
Yeah, I would have said the original favorite, Brendan Fraser. Mummy. See, I knew we'd agree on at least some of these. Favorite werewolf movie?
Werewolf movie. That's a harder one. Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, the Wolfman remake was kind of fun, but Howling was also really good. That's a hard one. I love the idea of werewolves and the concept more than necessarily the
actual.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I've seen enough werewolves on film. I haven't seen the ones that Kat mentioned. I could say Harry Potter: The Prisoner of Azkaban, but the werewolf in that looks terrible.
All right, so I've got a list of these. So I'm going to go with Monster Squad, the Wolfman. That's just hilarious, isn't that?
Okay.
Teen Wolf. Okay. Comedy, not really horror, but werewolf movie nonetheless. Teen Wolf in that, and Wolf with Jack Nicholson.
Oh, that's a good one. I've not seen that yet. It's on my watch list.
Okay. Ghost movie.
Ghost movie.
Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl.
Gosh, ghost movies. That's a hard one. I don't have one. That's a hard. I don't really have. Come to think of it, none of these movies I showed off are ghost movies.
Ghostbusters.
Well, yeah, that's a comment. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
I'll just pick Ghostbusters. Why not?
Ghostbusters. I mean, you can't beat that right there. And yeah, really, if you get down to it, my favorite movie that really involves it's not a movie, okay? It breaks the thing a little bit. It would be the miniseries arc of Sam Hain from the Real Ghostbusters cartoon show. It's what they tried to remake Frozen Empire after, but they should have stuck way closer to the source material. So it's that, and I think that's some of the greatest.
Did you say Sam Hain?
Yes.
Yeah, that's from Halloween 2 as well.
Yeah, is that character is in that miniseries arc, in there, and like I said, I strongly think Frozen Empire was highly influenced by that, but they didn't go quite all in enough. Favorite zombie movie?
Night of the Living Dead, the original.
I
thought that was very effective.
I Am Legend.
Yeah.
World War Z. I thought that was a fresh.
Zombies, World War Z.
Yeah, it was a fresh take on the genre.
I'm going to go with, I think this one might be slightly controversial, which is Dawn of the Dead, Ving Rhames, the 2006 version, not the original Romero.
Oh, the 2004 one by Zack Snyder?
I think it was 04, 06, something. It had Ving Rhames.
Yeah, that was a good one. Where zombies run for the first time. That was great. Yeah. That was an excellent movie.
That's a good one. And it's taking something that was classic. That's one of those that you think you probably shouldn't mess with, but they messed with it and they did it right. And
Actually, I'll add to that. Sorry, 28 days later.
28 days later. I was wondering if say Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to go with more scary films than seasonal films, but
right.
Yeah, Shaun of the Dead was also tip of my tongue as well.
Oh, that just had 20th anniversary last month.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
And it's a TV staple as well.
All right.
At this time of year.
Other creatures, other spooky, scary creatures, other things outside of the ones we've talked about.
In terms of weirdo slasher things, I think The Shape was pretty good. The original for Michael Myers. He was in the first. He was pretty good in the second one as well, Halloween 2, with Dick Warlock playing him. It still had a bit of that eerie atmosphere. After that, he just became kind of like a regular slasher, like whatever. But I think that was a really good one. Freddy Krueger. He's again. People kind of forget that the first movie he is a really horrible person, but
right.
they kind of remember, all the humor that they injected all the sequels, and that's a great story too. When Bob Shea invited Wes Craven back because he wanted him to do another Nightmare movie, he's like, "Air all your grievances. Tell me what you don't like about the sequels." And he just like all the humor and having Freddy be like the kids show up thinking Freddy's cool. They kind of forget that he's a child, all that kind of shit. And Bob's listening there and he's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Do you want to make another one?" It's like, "Sure, you can do what you want." It's like, "Great." Like, I wish Hollywood was like that these days, Let the good directors do their stuff,
So which film did that lead to afterwards?
Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994, which was the 7th Freddy Krueger film. Okay. After they had supposedly killed Freddy for the last time in the 6th movie, which was called Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. But once they got Wes Craven agreed to come back, that's why they had the title be Wes Craven's New Nightmare, because they knew the fans would just accept it. That, if Wes is back,
Right.
Then it's worth it.
I'll say Cloverfield.
Okay. Yeah.
Otherworldly monster. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Otherworldly monster critter is. I'm gonna go with like literal critters, and I'm gonna say critters.
Nice.
I mean, that just again, that's one of the ones from my childhood that I can watch now because it's silly. But at the time, that's spooky, scary kind of thing.
I'd imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go with horror movie scream queen, whether it's from a particular movie or a particular scream queen herself.
Jamie Lee Curtis has been a lot of them. And other people who aren't in many of them still kind of like Heather Langenkamp was in 3 of the Nightmare movies. I think the one who literally lives up to the title of Scream Queen would be Marilyn Burns from Texas Chainsaw, because the entire second half of that movie, she's just screaming at the top of her lungs. It's like, how did you even have a voice to scream at the end of filming? I have no idea. It's quite surprising.
Yeah, I'd probably say Jamie Lee Curtis as well. But then, apart from the Halloween films, I haven't seen many of the sequels and the other kind of parallel slasher films like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. So I don't have that many other actresses to compare to.
Yeah, I think I would have to absolutely agree with everything. It's like Jamie Lee Curtis has had the full gamut of the whole thing. You know, she has gone from stereotypical do all the wrong things and just scream at everything, to being the protagonist and the heroine and coming back and being badass and taking it out. I think Neve Campbell like tried to imitate and be Jamie Lee Curtis, but didn't have the screaminess part.
Unpopular opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of Neve Campbell's Sidney Prescott character in all the sequels. Because it's the same thing. She's the traumatized person over and over and over again. So it's like when people were talking about, oh, Scream 6, how could you do it without her? And I'm like, I miss Dewey a lot more in that movie than I miss her. Yeah, Dewey was, oh my God, how can you get rid of Dewey, you know?
Right. But if you're going to go for someone who has the absolute best scream of, you know, outside of Fay Wray, I'm going to go with Ariana Richards from Jurassic Park.
That's a good one.
I mean, she just, that entire movie screams her absolute head off.
That's very true.
One of my favorite films of all time as well.
So, but yeah, I think that about wraps us up. We are way ridiculously over time, but I do hope that people have enjoyed this little take, bits and parts. Don't forget, people, go ahead and comment to us if you have ideas for other shows, if you're passionate about these movies, if there are horror movies goodness knows that we missed, that we didn't do it. Go ahead and email us right there at vcunifyingforce@gmail.com. Let us know what you want to hear from, what you want to see on the show. What should we go and watch? What are we missing that we haven't seen? I've got a list of things from these two that I need to go out and watch now. And Gio, you better be going and watching Monster Squad. I'm just saying. It's there.
We'll get the watch party going.
That's it.
As soon as it's available on streaming.
Indeed.
Well, then yeah. We might have to hold our breath then, but we'll have to go find a copy.
Oh yeah. Well, that's like one of those things is there are certain like 80s, 90s movies that don't exist anywhere that you have to find as a secondhand DVD or Blu-ray. Like
I forgot about this one.
Space Camp. Oh, The Cabin in the Woods. Yeah. Oh, we didn't even talk about like Evil Dead.
That's right. I don't have that one. I kind of thought Evil Dead was. I like the sequels to Evil Dead a lot more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's where you start with it. Anyway, we could do another hour. We'll save that for next year. We'll see you again in spooky season next year, but we'll see you again with another topic in 2 weeks. All right. May the force be with you.
May the force be with you all.